Welcome back to this segment of Altitude. And with me, I have Fredrick Blocton, president of UPNet Technologies. Fredrick, how are you doing today, sir?
Good.
It's good to see you.
Thank
Good to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming.
Yep.
So, do you mind if I call you Fred?
That's fine.
Fantastic.
Just for you only.
Just for me only?
Yep.
All right, Fred. Well, thank you very much, sir.
Yep.
So tonight we're here to talk about leadership and what it's like to be an African-American male in a very senior position of a big company, in a big technology company with a lot of engineers and, STEM-related fields.
Sure.
So Fred, tell me a little bit about what you do as the president of your company.
Sure. So the ball, kind of stops here, right? It's like having the big hatchet over your head to make sure that everything below you is working. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that come up as a president or a leader of any company is employees. Mm-hmm. And you hire people with the idea that they're going to have, longevity with your company. And in order to do that, as the president, I'm responsible for continuing to open the doors so that we have more opportunities for our employees and the growth, right? And it's really important in leadership that you also recognize that employees have families. Mm-hmm. And it's all tied into what they're doing at their job and how you're treating them at the job. So it's a big deal as being a leader to be conscious, at all times, not only about your employees, but also about customers.
Yeah, absolutely. So in this particular role, there's a lot of responsibility as a president.
Yes.
When you were young, could you envision yourself being the president of a company, or can you share a little bit about how you got to where you're at? Maybe a story or two along that pathway?
I don't know. I think leadership starts as you understand that you are a leader, right? And so I've always been projected. I have my family is based in education, right? And so they've always preached, lead or stay out. Don't always, accept what's happening. You always got to challenge the status quo. So as a kid, in my senior year in high school, I was the chair of our treasury for our church. And as a senior in high school. So I took some leadership positions as a young person, right? And then, Michael, it's like what you do. You just get pushed up, to the top, to take the responsibility.
But you have to be a risk taker too. I mean, were you ever uncomfortable when you stepped into those leadership position as a young person?
I'm uncomfortable almost every day, right? Because it's a challenge. I mean, and people, they expect different of you. Like when I say I'm president, right, it's not, they're like, oh, it means something, outside of you, and not that, it's an ego trip or anything, but it's a responsibility because they expect you to say and do stuff different, at that time, right?
Or you're truly vested with that company. You have a stake in the company's success
Yep.
and or its failure. You're not just punching a clock, and if something's left on the table, you can walk away, pick it up the next morning.
Doesn't work that way. It's
gotta burn that.
24/7.
Yeah.
Right.
Speaking of 24/7, the last time I think we had an actual work conversation was a year ago for the NFL Super Bowl. Can you share a little bit about one major project like that?
Sure. So UPNet Technologies, we have a platform that we patented, and we actually compete with SAP and other large-scale, ERPs, as you know, right? And so what we did is we worked with the Minnesota Vikings and the NFL during the Super Bowl. And what we did is we built a solution to be able to capture all of the moving numbers and people and activities to produce metrics around what happened at the Super Bowl, who worked on it, what's the economic impact, how many dollars was spent, downtown, out in the suburbs.
So in words that I can understand then, because that was a lot, I know you're at that president level, but what you're saying is for every single business, every single transaction that was part of the Super Bowl economy, all the cash register transactions of the business reports, all of that, you took all that data, all the ticket sales, maybe what restaurants people ate at, how many, what the revenue for other stores were. You bought all that into this big kind of database, and then you use people that had skills in like data science or analytics, and what do they call that when you do EDI transfers and all that EDI, electronic data interchange, where you take data here, you transform it and you map it so it fits into your database. So you're saying you were responsible for all these millions and millions of transactions to come up with a report that tells them exactly where this went.
Where every dollar went.
For every dollar went.
Where every dollar. Yep.
That's incredible because that was a lot of transactions.
Yep, but every transaction goes somewhere. Remember that, right? And it always lands somewhere, right? And so what our engine does is exactly what you explained. We sit here and we can transact any or transfer any data point from anywhere in the world. And so what happens from an EDI standpoint,
wow. Okay.
so the EDI says, hey, we had transactions, Apple had 142 transactions, that equal $540,000, which dropped into the bucket. Apple registered in our system so we could always do some check and balances against them, who they are, right? And so we produced those metrics, and we could tell you who was black, white, green, purple, working on the project.
Fantastic. That is truly amazing. So, in a way, what you did is you were working in an area where there's actually a market now for like data science.
Yes.
You're going to hear a lot of people talking about data science, data analytics, and so maybe for the young people in our audience, they might really seriously take a look at this because coding is one thing, but then actually being able to understand and interpret the data is another skill.
That's correct.
Right? So, and that's an emerging, associates and 4-year degree and certifications, learning those types of tools.
Right. And then what I'll do is I'll add to those tools because there's a word that always miss, and it's called algorithms. Right? And so the algorithms are really what, transfers out to the world. They got AI and other things now, but algorithms build those AIs because they produce and take in all the data in, right? Garbage in, garbage out, good data in, good data out, right? And so those algorithms are what kids are really start to think about as they're young because it goes into the technical field, but it also uses their analytical skills around how and what they see that needs to be produced. The one thing that I believe in, and I think is going to be very prevalent here today, a lot of times we like to go backwards and do research, but a lot of times we're researching on bad data, right?
Missing data.
Yeah, it's bad data. But what I think is a good thing for us to start thinking about in this world is ground zero. Why do we go back? Let's go forward, right? And then we could grab enough data in 6 months or a year to really put together a trending plan. Sure.
As you were talking, and I don't mean to diminish in any way this, but the example that was running through my mind was I think of, when I attempted to play basketball as a younger person, you always try to watch your opponent and see which way they move and try to figure out so that you anticipate where they're going to be at. You don't anticipate where they went. Is that what you're saying? You anticipate where they're going to be at and start working on those algorithms and then work towards the future, if you will, or project forward.
That's correct.
So the word algorithm, we'll just play on that real briefly, is you are also, if I'm not mistaken, the president of a local chapter of a technical organization. Can you share a little bit about that and how a student would learn algorithms in that program?
Sure. And it's called the Black Data Processing Associates, and BDPA, which we train young kids from level 1, level 2, level 3, all the way up to advanced. And what we do is we start working with the kids at a very young age. Right now, we're starting with first graders.
I saw that at the banquet,
Yep, and we had a third grader who came up and did an incredible speech about what he learned in class around algorithms, around learning how to dissect what things really mean so that you know what to input so that you get the output. And you have to build the algorithms in between there to be able to do both. And these kids are tracking with that right now, and first graders and second and third graders are just
never too young. Yeah, these kids are pretty amazing out there, and so hopefully somebody in our audience will be able to, either a parent or a auntie or somebody will be able to get this message back to these students to say it's never too young to start. There's a lot of big words. There's a lot of things that are intimidating. There's a lot of perceptions, like you said, that whole air about being a president. You assume that you're giving that title more power than it really realistically is. It comes with a set of accountabilities, not mistaking or diminishing that. But even these kindergartens and first graders can start to get into a BDPA. They can get in, we were just talking about NSBE SEEK program or NSBE Junior chapter. We were talking about being able to just start and be fearless and try to find those programs and participation. You have to be in it to win it.
Yep.
Right.
And as I shared with the kids on Friday, the future, is right now, and you work on your right now, because guess what? You're going to spend the rest of your life in your future, right?
So beautiful.
And so what happens with these kids, and amazing, this, that they come into what we call a smart zone, where they can be as smart as they want to be, and they just blossom. And you've seen these kids come in and sit at these computers for 4 hours and not look left or right, and they're totally focused on their lives and being the next whoever they want to be, right? And what we try to get them to focus on is you, right? So that they understand they're in it for them. You know what I mean? And it can be a big whirl if they take the challenge. And a lot of those kids are taking the challenge. It's just amazing, And you were at the event on Friday, and what was really nice is that when there was a pause, you could hear nothing in the room. There was no kids chattering, no kids playing around. They were locked into what was happening, right? The whole time, which was a beautiful thing.
It was.
Yeah.
Well, I applaud you, Fred, for all your hard work with BDPA as a president of a major local company and all the wonderful things that you do in the community. Before we break, is there anything that you'd like to say to any of the young people out there?
Yep, I sure do. It's bdpatc.org. That's where you want to go register for our classes that are coming up in February. We have our 20-week classes. We're going to be doing level 1, level 2, level 3, and we're going to be taking on 1st through 12th graders. And you can be at any level.
Fantastic.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Fred.